Ladies and gentlemen, today we are looking at Chapter 2, Lesson 1 in our Glencoe Course 2 math book. This lesson is on percents and percentages and on how to find a percent of a number. We are on page 104. Percent literally means per 100. So out of 100 or something, we have 91 if we had 91%. 91% means 91 out of 100. 91 per 100. Okay? So, we write a percent using the percent sign. We cannot, however, multiply percentages. We cannot divide percentages. We cannot add them. We cannot subtract them as they are written. We have to change them into either a fraction or a decimal. So the first thing that we're going to do is look at solving and finding answers to things. And the first time that we do it, I'm going to show you the same problem, working it out as a decimal and as a fraction. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. So, at the top of page 104, it says to find the percent of a number, such as 60% of 2,000, you can use either of the following methods. Write the percent as a fraction that multiplies, or write the percent as a decimal that multiplies. So, let's use 60% of 2,000. The word of means to multiply. We're looking at something of something. The of means that we multiply. So let's look at a fraction first. I said percent meant out of how many? 100. So we can put 60 over 100. That's a fraction, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. We multiply that times 2,000. The 2,000 has to go over what? 1. Okay. 60 times 2,000. Believe it or not, we can do that in our head. Yes, we can.
1,200,000.
When I do that, I add up my zeros. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 zeros. 1, 2, 3, 4. 6 times 2 is 12. 120,000 divided by 100 times 1 is 100. Then we need to simplify. Good news, if we have zeros in our numerator and zeros in our denominator, and that 0 is at the end, our zeros cancel. So that would be like dividing by 10, dividing by 100. So that leaves us with 1,200 over 1, which is 1,200. Option A, using a fraction. Okay. Let's look at option B, using a decimal with the same problem. You with me? Okay. If we have a decimal, we start with our 60. To convert a percent to a decimal, we move the decimal point 2 places to the left. So our decimal point is here, it's invisible. We move it 1 spot, 2 spots. So it becomes 0.60. Of again means to multiply by 2,000. Then I multiply. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 zeros. Two times 6 is 12. Now, I have to add in my decimal point.
No.
I have 2 decimal places. So I need 2 decimal places in my answer. When I add those 2 decimal places, I start at the end. So the lowest place value, which would be 1s. 1, 2. So I end up with 1,200. Just like I I think I said that as 12,000 the first time, and I apologize. 1,200, 1,200. Both ways get us to the same answer. Now, we've shown that we can do it either way. It doesn't matter which way we choose. But, I prefer using the decimal. The reason why I prefer to use the decimal method. One, when we're out in the real world, when I see a sign that says 40% off, or when I'm looking for the amount of sales tax for something, which is generally 8% where we're at, or if I'm looking for the amount of tip to leave at a table when I go out to dinner at a restaurant, you leave somewhere between 10 and 20%. 15 to 18% is fairly common, as is 20%, because 20% is easy to find. I generally work with the decimal version. Could I do it as a fraction? Yes. But when we're trying to do this, are we going to pull out our piece of notebook paper to write out our work so that we know what to do in our phone calculator? No. Could we have a tip calculator in our phone? Yes. Could we have a sale calculator in our phone? I'm sure there's an app for that too. But, and some stores are even really nice and they put the sale price up there on a nice little chart. If you haven't seen that yet, next time you go to the store, look. When they have, on one side it'll say 60% off. And then on the other side it'll tell you the price for everything. Or, was this fairly easy to do in our heads?
No. Yes.
Yeah.
All you had to do is
We just multiplied and then moved the decimal point. Okay? So, I like the decimal version. If you prefer the fraction version, can you use it?
Yes.
Yeah, am I going to mark it wrong because you did it as a fraction?
No.
No. Not at all. Both are perfectly acceptable ways to solve a problem. Okay? Let's look at another example. In our book, we have number 1 says find 5% of 300. Now it says to do it using a fraction. Okay, let's take a poll. How many of you want to see it as a fraction? Okay? How many want to see it as a decimal? Alright, decimal wins out by an almost unanimous vote. 5% of 300. Alright, now I'm going to write our steps to solving this out to the side. Step 1, I move the decimal point 2 places. In which direction, right or left? Left. Okay? So if it starts here, 1 point, 2 point, I have an empty space, so what goes in there? 0.
0.
I like to call my ghost 0. Okay. So that means that I have 0.05 or 5/100 times 300. Make sure that you can tell the difference between a decimal point and a multiplication sign. The decimal point needs to be at the bottom of your number by the line on your paper. The multiplication sign needs to be in the middle of that space where you write. Step 2 is to multiply. .05 times 300.
5 times 3 is 15.
300 times
1500.
0.05. You're guessing. And it's not 1,500. 5 times 0 is 0. 5 times 0 is 0. 5 times 3 is 15. I can do the same thing with a 0 here and put in a whole lot of zeros. Do I need to do that?
No.
No. How many decimal places do I need?
1.
No, 2.
I need 2 decimal places. I have 1 decimal place, 2 decimal places in my problem. I need 1 decimal place, 2 decimal places in my answer. So my solution is 15. Ladies and gentlemen, let's do the common sense answer check.
Do you keep the zeros down?
You don't have to. Let's do common sense answer check. I know that if I have 10%, then I move this decimal point 1 place, right? So 10% of 300 would be 30. But I have 5%. My answer less than 30? Yeah.
Yes.
Is 5 half of 10?
Yes.
Yes.
Is 15 half of 30?
Yes.
So does my answer make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, it does.
Speech.
Okay. Any questions about example 1?
No.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, if this is what my work looks like, what should your work look like when you solve it?
Exactly like that.
It should look a lot like mine. Okay? Let's look at using a percent greater than 100 because we can have more than 100% of something. For example, it would be fantastic if I got 120% of my paycheck.
Oh, yes.
That would be fantastic.
You want to teach a lot.
If we got 120% of the amount of fries at lunch, that would be fantastic, right?
No.
Okay. All right.
Hamburger.
Okay, if we got 120% of our hamburgers.
Yeah.
Okay. If I gave you
Noodles.
if we got 120% of something, except time in, detention or whatever.
Ice cream.
120% of ice cream. Does everybody like ice cream?
Yeah.
Okay.
I made it.
All right, guys.
Cookies and cream. Ooh, yeah. Ooh.
So we can't agree on a food, but 120% of something sounds like a good thing, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Because that means that we get everything that we started with plus more, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so if we're finding 120% of something, then that means that our final answer should be larger than what we start with, correct?
Yes.
If you are doing your multiplication and you end up with a smaller value, what would that tell you? You made a mistake somewhere, right?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so let's look at let's find 120% of 75 because I've been using 120% a lot today. So we are looking at example 3. Could we still do, if we had a percent over 100, could we still do it using a fraction?
Yes.
Yeah. We'd just be working with more improper fractions. Just means more simplifying later, but that's okay. Example 3 says 120% of 75. Alrighty. Now, if I color coded my steps here, do you think I'm going to color code my work for you here?
Yes.
Yes. Do you think you need to color code things in your work?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
No.
You use pencil only, not colored pencil, so you cannot color code. Alright. 120%, step 1, says to move the decimal point of our percentage 2 places to the left. So my decimal point starts behind the 0. It goes 1, 2 places. So I end up with 1.2. Do I have to put the 0?
No, it's
No.
not necessary.
Okay? We can include it if we want to. We do not have to. Alright? 1.2 times 75. Alright? What what 2 tell us to do? Multiply. So 1.2 times 75. Does it matter which term we put on top and which one we put on the bottom?
No.
Nope. To make it easier, my recommendation would be to put the value with the largest number of terms, so the one with the biggest numbers. Like if we had 3 digits instead of 2 digits, that number goes on top. All right? 5 times 2 is?
10.
10. Thank you. Carry the 1. 5 times 1 is?
1. I mean 5.
5. 5 plus 1 is?
6.
6. Then, because this is the same as multiplying by 70, we're going to add a 0 here. What's 7 times 2?
14.
14. Carry my 1. 7 times 1 is?
8.
7 times 1 is?
Oh, I could have said 7 plus 1. 7.
7 plus 1 is? 8.
8.
I added up. 0 plus 0 is?
0.
6 plus 4 is?
10.
Carry the 1. 8 plus 1 is?
9.
All right. How many decimal places are there in my problem?
1.
1.
1. How many do I need in my answer?
2.
1. 2.
1. 1.
1.
If I have 1 decimal place in my problem, I need 1 decimal place in my answer. The number of decimal places in my problem is equal to the number of decimal places in my answer. So here I have 1 decimal place. I need 1 decimal place in my answer. So 120% of 75 is 90.
90.
Is 90 greater than 75?
Yes.
Is it just a little bit bigger?
No. It's a lie. 20%?
It's greater.
Actually, so.
So 20%. That's a fairly small value, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're comparing 75 and 20. 20 is a little bit of 75, correct?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so then does adding about 20 make sense? Yeah.
Yes.
We went up 15. From 75 to 90, we added 15. That sounds about like 20%. It's a little bit more. So 90 makes sense. Do we have questions?
No.
No?
I hope I get it.
Fantastic.